be there. And from our standpoint, it was, as we said before, like best player available at that point in the draft. And not only from a playing standpoint, but from a kind of a character standpoint, we feel really good about, and a very young player, too, with a bright future.
Mike, did you have any offers tonight at all?
I'm sorry?
Would any of those offers come tonight, in the time leading up to your pick?
Yeah, so the way, I'm not going to comment on individual, what teams or whatever. Yeah. So really what happens a lot, there's a lot of conversations before the draft, leading up to the draft, and then when you actually get to the actual draft itself, there's calls usually that happen before the pick. There's calls when you're on the clock, so you sort of wait and see what happens with that. But in the end, there was never anything that was, again, that we felt strongly enough about to make a move on.
Quinn had such an impressive 2018 season, but really that was kind of when he only played. Do you have any concerns about kind of a small sample size with him of just one season as a starter?
No, not really. I mean, we actually, did quite a bit of work on him. Obviously, when we went down there, I think when you really watch him, again, the level of comp in terms of the conference he played in, the games he played in, I think really, and you look at his body of work, he played exceptionally well the whole season. We actually think, and really considering how young he has a very bright future and played very well, and will actually be a really good addition to what we want to do here, and especially from building a really strong defensive line.
How do you envision him fitting on the defensive line?
Well, I'll basically let Adam and Greg kind of figure that out. But I think right now we have a lot of good pieces. So I think when you line up our defense, whether it's from a position standpoint where that's going to work itself out, but I think really we have the chance to put some pretty good interior players on the field. We have some guys that can definitely, from a package standpoint, give Greg a lot of ability and flexibility to kind of put guys in like key positions to be impactful and effective.
So you do think Mike can play a little nose tackle as well?
I think he has the ability to play up and down the line, quite frankly. I think he's a very, very good player, and again, I think there's a lot of ways we can use him in what we're going to do going forward. But yes, I do think he has the ability to play nose tackle if that's a possibility there too.
Can he stand up and play
Linebacker?
out?
Again, we'll I think he's got a lot of ability. I think it's just, I think he has the ability to play up and down the line. So they'll figure out where the best guys on the field and who, how that all works itself out. And
pass rush has always been an issue. It's been an issue for a while. Was there a temptation, to go edge rusher there, and beyond that, is this guy able to be disruptive enough where he's a pass rusher, from inside?
Yeah. I think really with the pass rushing part, everybody obviously focuses on the exterior, the edge rushers, but in the same breath, it's if you have really good pass rushers on the interior too. There's definitely ways you can pressure the defense. I think one thing I've always felt is when you start sort of trying to factor what you want or what you ideally from a need standpoint, and you factor that into your evaluation process, you always run the risk of potentially making a mistake from that standpoint. I've said this before, a team's need or a team's area of need is not necessarily has anything to do with that player's ability to be successful. So if you factor that into your decision-making process, you run the risk of making a mistake on a player or passing on a player that turns out to be a very good player.
Mike, how sure were you that Murray and Bosa would be the two guys off the board?
I think leading into it, we felt, I think it's funny, like somebody was asked me about this before the draft, and, there's some talk that, maybe Murray wasn't going to be the number one pick. But I think from everything we had heard, we always, felt very strongly that we felt very comfortable and strong about the fact that we thought Murray and Bosa were going to be the, picks 1 and 2. Going back a year ago, it was interesting when obviously Baker got drafted and Sam thus fell to us. We were pretty sure, we thought Sam was going 1 for a long period of time. When that happened, it was a difference of a player within the position. But when it was a question of the quarterback or defensive lineman, we thought, in the end, we could see them maybe taking a different quarterback. But they seemed so focused on the quarterback. And we heard that early on from literally the combine. There was a lot of people a lot of talk coming out of their building about that. So I think really the first 2 picks sort of fell the way we thought they would. So
with the type of players you have on the defensive line now, you obviously have a lot of money invested in that position. If a team were to call asking about Leonard, if you were to be available in a trade, would you entertain any proposals for Leonard?
Well, I would say simply, I'm not going to sit here and speculate on any particular players on our team right now. But no, we like Leonard quite a bit. We actually like the idea of putting all these guys on the field at the same time. And we have the ability to, I think in our minds, have a very, very strong defensive front. And I'm really excited to see how Greg Williams can use all those players.
How do you think the addition of Quinn can help Leonard? Because at times in his career he's been the focal point of offenses in terms of double teams and things like that.
Yep.
But he's got this guy next to him. How does that help?
Well, I would say, when you look at a lot of teams that you face, it's obviously, the ability to push the pocket from the middle and basically get guys isolated. I think that would be a big bonus for any team, and obviously the group of guys we have, and not to take anything away from, Steve and Henry and even Nathan from last year, Shepard. We think we have the ability to have a very stout defense up the middle. I would strongly feel about that with what we've done in free agency and with having Jamal in the back end with Marcus. But I think the real thing is when you have the ability to push the pocket from the middle. I think that's a very, if you can do that, and I think there's some teams like Baltimore and the Giants in years past when they had very good defensive lines, that was one of the things they really did well with the ability to push the pocket from the interior part. And that's a very difficult thing. It's one thing to address edge rushers when you have the ability to, align tight ends and running backs. When you have the interior guys and you have two really good interior rushers, that would actually, I think, give teams a lot of problems.
Can you
Will
recall?
you make an effort tomorrow to get back into the second round by trading up into it?
Well, I think we'll probably look into it. I think it's one of those ones where it really depends how the board unfolds. Obviously, there are a lot of picks to go through today, and we'll kind of, like a lot of teams do, we'll huddle and kind of see what, and we've done a lot of work on trying to project where guys may go. But if there's a player or two we feel is worth going up and chasing, we'll look into doing that. I'm not going to sit here and say we will absolutely do that, but I think it's definitely, I think every team does that more or less.
What do you like about Quinn's personality?
It's interesting. When we interviewed a lot of the players at the Combine initially, he was extremely impressive, and he's such a young player. And I think the thing that, aside from the personality standpoint, when you guys get a chance to visit him a little bit and kind of, get to know him, from a personality standpoint, being so young, he had a bit of maturity about him, but a lot of really positive energy. But then when we started talking with him, like with our coaches, and we started sitting down and watching tape with him and realized how kind of insightful. Well, I mean, he plays the game not just from on his physical standpoint, but he really is, a student of the game. He credits a lot of that to the guys at Alabama and the guys that have coached him. But no, that was one of the guys when he walked out. It was interesting. It's funny. We videotaped the interviews at the Combine. But that was one where I kind of came in at the end of it and I kind of missed it, because I was kind of running late dealing with a meeting I had to be in. And I remember literally walking in as Quinn's walking out, and everybody was like just ranting and raving about how well he did. So, and then we actually had the chance to bring him in here and spend time with him here. And it was definitely, again, he's a guy we feel very good about, and he's just scratching his potential.
Did you get into any discussion with him about the influence his mom had on him over
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
what did you draw out of that?
Well, I think it's one of those ones where, again, I think it's like a lot of players, and quite frankly, we felt this way with Sam last year. We got a chance to actually, get to know and be around Sam and then eventually meet his parents. It was the same thing with Quinnen to a degree. Now, I haven't had a chance to meet Quinnen's mother yet. But when you hear about all those things but I meant when I get a chance to spend time with him, be around him, like you hear his story, it's a pretty impressive thing about how he kind of was sort of raised the other kids in the family and stuff like that. And it's, dealt with a lot of things that a lot of guys haven't dealt with in their lives, and really was impressive how he, came across with that.
Mike, can you recall, because he didn't really play much before last year, can you recall anecdotally, like when he first came on your radar this fall? I mean, was it one game, or, because he was pretty much an unknown there at Alabama. He wasn't on the field that much.
It was interesting. So we kind of knew about him from our guys going through there. We're really talking him up, and when you go through this process, we don't really, like a lot of teams, you don't spend a lot of work on the underclassmen. You sort of, you're aware of them. I think when I actually, when I really became aware of him more so was after the season was kind of over and obviously the underclassmen declared and came out. And I remember what I normally do is I pull off 5 tapes and I sort of watch their best comp tapes, not their most productive tapes, but their best comp tapes. And I remember calling down to the video department. I was like, are you guys just putting just his tackles on this tape, or are you guys putting all the plays on the tape? And really when you watched him in every game he played in, he was impactful. He made plays, showed up, and, both in the run and the pass. And it was one of those guys who just, as you watched him, he just was a very, very dominant player and again, some of the better competition he played against.
You alluded to the Combine interview. You didn't get a chance to see it, but when you went back and watched the video of it, I presume you did?
Yep.
What did you think of the interview? The guys are raving about it.
Yep.
What were your impressions?
Very, very similar. I mean, I think it was one of those ones when you really started listening to him diagnose and talk through the plays. Again, not only just, remembering the defense, the front, what they were supposed to do on given plays, tendencies and techniques of the players. I mean, definitely a very cerebral player, which I thought was pretty impressive. And I think that also, not just from a physical standpoint, but when you combine that with him as a player, I think he has that, he has some kind of exceptional ability in that area.
Take a couple more.
You guys interviewed him at the combine length and had him in for a
Yep.
pre-draft visit. Anything else? Did you go down there and work him out at all or anything like that?
No, I think some of the players this year in particular, once they worked out of the combine, they didn't actually have private workouts and their other years in the past when you would do that. So, but our thing was obviously at the combine. We saw him. We obviously watched him work out. He didn't do anything at his pro day, and then we obviously brought him into the facility. So that was really our chance to get exposed to him, be around him.
Obviously, he's got physical talent, speed, and power, but how impressive is his technique and his fundamentals, and how big of a part did that play?
Well, I think when you look at any player, you look at what they are in terms of their physical talent, their ability, their technique. You look at things you can improve upon. But again, when you watch him, I think that, again, the big thing shows up a lot of times with his hands and how he uses his hands, his ability to get on the edge of the pass rusher. And he consistently did that versus some obviously very good players we thought that are in the draft this year, and then obviously some young players too. But we were very impressed by his ability. I think there's still potential to develop with the kid, but but I think that you combine the technique, you combine the instincts, you combine the athletic ability. We think he has the parts and pieces to be a really good player.
When you pick a defensive lineman this high, how much do you factor in how much he can immediately contribute, and how much does that kind of weigh into your decision?
Yeah, I think what you focus on, I mean, that's part of it, but the reality, you tend to focus more on the potential you think the player has, and that's what you're mostly focused on, trying to project what he's going to be like over his first, 2, 3, 4 years, and potentially longer. But again, that's what you don't just look at how they can help you day one as much as you look at, hey, who you're going to invest in, who you think he's going to be able to fulfill that potential.
He's been compared by some to Aaron Donald. Do you see that as an accurate comparison, or is there another comp player that kind of stands out to you?
I think, obviously Aaron was a very good player coming out of college. I think Quinnen, there's a lot of players I think he kind of compares to, but I would say, I don't like to sit here and compare him to one player or another player, but I definitely think he has the ability to, impact the game both as a pass rusher and a run defender, which is and really when you watched Aaron coming out of college, he was extremely disruptive and penetrated and made a lot of plays. I think Quinnen, again, very similar, and again, he did it in some people's minds, one of the better conferences in college football, and even with the championships and stuff like that they played in. But I thought the thing with him is he just consistently played well and made plays and has a very bright future.
This is kind of
Last one.
Nope.
Sorry, I did it again. When you guys drafted Leonard on the defensive line, you had already had Damon, you had Sheldon, you had Mo, and it seemed like throughout that year you struggled a little bit. It could have been the coaching staff, but you struggled a little bit in terms of piecing all those guys together and finding a way to make it work. Why do you think adding Quinnen to a line that has Steve and Leonard and Henry will be different this time around? Like, why will it work now?
Well, I think a little bit of it. I don't necessarily think the other time it failed. I mean, I think the first season we were here, we won 10 games. So I think we actually played. I think we had the top 5 defense in the league at that year. I think the defense was ranked 10th or 5th. I'm sorry, and the offense was ranked 10th generally. I think any team would like to have a very talented group of players. I like the idea of, and then we talked about this, of Greg Williams figuring out a way to utilize all the pieces you have in the most impactful way. So I would simply say, to me, it's not a bad problem to have a lot of really talented players. And quite frankly, you have the ability to rotate and keep them fresh and put them in positions to, when teams play against us, from a matchup standpoint, to take advantage of guys that, may not match up as well, given all the players we can put out there.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks,
All right.
So you think tonight, really nice.
Yes.